The school bell rings, marking the end of another day where Kanata Kitami successfully blended into the wallpaper. He's just packing his bag when the atmosphere in the room shifts. It's Marika-chan, his childhood friend and the school's undisputed son, tilting her head with a smile that could melt glaciers. She dips toward him, catching him off guard. "Are you about to go home? We should go together." Walking with her is like escorting royalty through a crowd of thirsty peasants. Every guy in the hall is practically vibrating with jealousy, trying to figure out how the background character scored the lead actress. One guy builds up the nerve to ask her to karaoke, but she doesn't even hesitate. She just beams and delivers the rejection with lethal sweetness. "No, I already have plans." To the rest of the world, she's an idol surrounded by flowers. To Kanata, she's the girl he's had a crush on forever, yet they feel worlds apart. While he broods over his own insignificance, she notices the distance in his eyes. She pouts, complaining about the guys staring at her, but she only seems to care about why he's being so quiet. By dusk, the weight of being a nobody finally crushes him. He looks at the glowing shooting star and screams into the void of his own mediocrity. "I'm so unpopular I could die." He doesn't want money or fame, he just wants a sign, a way to know if anyone actually cares. He wakes up thinking it was just a fever dream, but the air feels different. He claps his hands, half expecting a joke, but then the world glitches into a dating sim. Floating right there in his vision is his wish granted in cold, hard graphics. "I wish to understand other people's affection, just like in a game." It starts at the breakfast table. His mom is sporting a meter that's comfortably maxed out. Pure maternal love. Even Mameko, the family dog, is rocking a full bar of canine devotion. It's weird, it's intrusive, but it's undeniable. The power is real. He heads out to test the boundaries, but the world stays quiet. It doesn't trigger for the old man on the street or his male classmates. He starts to convince himself he's just losing his mind, that the pink bars were a one-time hallucination, until he slides open the classroom door. The room is a sea of floating pink bars. Every girl in class is broadcasting their inner feelings through a digital gauge. It's a sensory overload of data he never asked for, yet he can't look away. This isn't his imagination anymore, it's his new reality. His classmate Mikasa bounces over with a cheerful hello, her meter sitting at a steady 50%. He wonders if it's static or if he can actually influence the numbers. He reaches out, brushing a stray hair from her face, his heart hammering. There's something in your hair." The reaction is instant. A blush creeps up Mikasa's neck as the bar spikes toward the top of the gauge. Kanata freezes, his own face burning. It worked. He didn't just see her feelings, he changed them. It went up by a lot, but love isn't the only stat on the menu. He accidentally sits on a desk belonging to the silver-haired girl, and her glare is sharp enough to cut glass. Her meter doesn't just stay still, it plummets. The bar drains into the red as she snaps at him. "Why are you sitting on someone's desk?" The implications are terrifying. He can see every spark of interest and every drop of disgust in real time. But then a familiar voice drifts through the hall, and his stomach drops. If he can see everyone's heart, what is his childhood friend really hiding? Marika rounds the corner, her smile as bright as ever, but the meter above her head is a nightmare. It's not pink or red, it's a mangled black and purta mass that's literally dripping off the scale. It looks diseased, pulsing with an energy that makes his blood go cold. It's really bad. His soul practically leaves his body. He's convinced that purple slime means she absolutely loathes him, that their years together were just her politely tolerating an annoying NPC. By the time the final bell rings, he's a hollow shell of a man. It's over, my love life. But she doesn't leave. She lingers by his desk, her voice soft and genuinely worried. She tells him she likes the energetic Kanata-kun and wants to help. It's the kindest thing anyone has said to him all day, which only makes the pulsing, rotting meter above her head feel more like a death sentence. In his eyes, the world is a horror movie. Marika's face is adorable, but the UI is screaming a warning he can't decode. She invites him out, and his survival instincts are currently losing a wrestling match with his crush. So what on earth is that infernal meter all about? They end up on a park bench, cherry blossoms drifting around them like snow. It should be the perfect date, but Kanata is chewing his ice cream spoon like it's a piece of shrapnel. Every time she leans in, he expects the purple sludge to finally drown him. Then she goes for the kill. She asks for a bite of his ice cream, her eyes closing as she takes the spoon. He watches, paralyzed, as she licks her lips with a playful hum. It's an indirect kiss, a move straight out of a romance manga, delivered by a girl whose affection meter looks like a radioactive spill. She offers him a bite of hers in return, holding the spoon out with a giggle. His heart is thumping against his ribs like a trapped bird. He braces himself for the intimacy, but at the last second, she pulls back, laughing at his panicked expression. Just kidding. She bridges the gap and taps his nose, her smile soft and radiant under the trees. For a second the fear fades. She tells him she prefers him acting like his usual self, and the warmth in her voice feels so real it almost makes him forget the digital nightmare hovering above her. As they part ways, the confusion returns. How can someone act this loving and look this sweet while the truth of the meter is so distorted? He watches her walk away, left with the crushing weight of a question he's too terrified to answer. The sunset fades into a cold, clinical night. Marika enters her room, the cheerful mask of the popular childhood friend sliding off as she closes the door. The silence in her apartment isn't peaceful. It's heavy, filled with an obsession that has no outlet. She scrolls through her phone, dozens of photos of him, candid shots, sleeping faces, stolen moments. Then her gaze drifts to the walls. They're covered. Every inch is a shrine to Kanata Kitami. She whispers his name into the dark, her eyes wide and glassy. Why? She collapses to the floor, gripping her chest as if she's physically breaking. The purple sludge on the meter wasn't hate. It was the weight. Her love is so massive, so suffocatingly dense, that the supernatural gauge literally couldn't handle the load. She's not his enemy, she's his most terrifyingly devoted shadow. I'll definitely make you notice me. The school day starts with the same heavy, clinical dread. Every time Kanata looks at Marika, that purple, viscous sludge on her affection meter just drips and pulses. A glitch in reality that he has no idea how to fix. It's not a number, it's a warning. Then there's Toyotomi. Her meter is resting at a near-zero chill, but at least it isn't bleeding toxic waste in his head that makes her the safe option. He can see it now, the silver-haired reaper ending his school life before it even begins. That's irrational. His brain screams, but the fear is real. If he wants to survive this supernatural hand he's been dealt, he has to move. He has to be friendly. He has to try. He launches himself into her personal space like a social hand grenade. He's babbling about curry rice, offering up his soul's deepest secrets to a girl who looks like she'd rather be literally anywhere else. She doesn't even look up before she shuts him down. I never asked. Round 2. He's chasing her through the hallway, flexing his big win, a golden ticket from a chocolate egg. It's the kind of peak awkwardness that makes your skin crawl, and Toyotomi is clearly feeling the itch to bolt. The air in the room suddenly drops 10 degrees. Kanata waves it off with a cheerful "see ya later," completely oblivious to the fact that he just walked into the blast zone. She just stares, her eyes wide and dangerous. Huh? He's like a puppy that won't stop bringing back a stick nobody wants. He tries to grab her books, but her meter literally displays a down arrow as she snaps. I said, I don't need it. Don't touch my stuff. Bam! The sound of her palm against the locker echoes through the hall, pinning him in place. She's inches from his face, her teeth gritted into a snarl that says he's one word away from becoming a permanent part of the school architecture. The hell is wrong with you? Got an issue? She leaves him with a parting shot that stings worse than the wall pin. Don't push it. Stop talking to me, you nobody. He wanders home as the sky turns a bruising purple, the weight of the rejection sitting heavy in his gut. He passes the old park where he used to play with Marika, back when things were simple, back before the meters. But the sound of sobbing snaps him out of it. A little girl is slumped on the ground, her knee a mess of red. He doesn't hesitate. He's got the disinfectant and the bandages out before she can even finish her next cry. When she asks if he's a pharmacist, he can't help but laugh. It's the first real connection he's felt all day. She's bossy, demanding he help her all the way home since it still hurts. Looking at her, he gets this nagging sense of déjà vu. She feels familiar, even if he can't place why yet. It still hurts, so help me go home. They reach a nice house, and then the door opens. There she is. The Ice Queen herself, silver hair pulled back, wearing a pink apron and holding a ladle. The world stops spinning for a second. Toyotomi isn't just a classmate, she's the big sis Mashiro was crying for. Toyotomi drops the act, bowing low to thank him for helping her sister. But as Kanata tries to make a polite exit, Mashiro isn't having it. She latches onto his arm like a vice, a silent demand for him to stay. Suddenly, he's being drafted into dinner. Toyotomi is hesitant, her meter fluttering as she pats Mashiro's head. She gives in with a soft sigh, admitting she doesn't really know his taste, but the invitation is real. He sneaks a peek toward the kitchen. She looks completely different here. Focused, soft, and distinctly feminine. His heart does a little double thump. He's seeing the version of her she hides from the rest of the world. The curry is a masterpiece. One bite, and he's practically glowing. He forgets all about being a nobody or the wall pins from earlier. This is really delicious. Toyotomi-san, you're awesome at cooking. She tries to brush it off, explaining that she has to handle the chores because her parents work late. But as he showers her with genuine respect, the ice finally cracks. She turns away, a faint, soft blush creeping up her neck. That's not true. Dinner ends in a hazy, comfortable warmth. Watching her wipe Mashiro's face, he realizes he was wrong. She isn't a scary person, she's just someone carrying a lot on her own. Then he sees it. Mashiro has fallen asleep against him, her meter maxed out and literal flowers blooming from the top. But it's Toyotomi that shocks him. Her meter is surging, glowing pink, and filled with a warmth he never expected to see. He thanks her for the meal, and for a moment, the air between them is different, softer. Mashiro gives him one last hug, a big brother goodbye that leaves him beaming. Mashiro begs him to come back soon, and Toyotomi, eyes downcast, fingers playing with her hair, gives him the green light. Well, if Mashiro thinks that it's a good idea, he waves one last time, walking into the twilight with a smile. But on the other side of the street, the atmosphere curdles. Marika is standing there, phone in hand, watching. The cheerful mask hasn't just slipped, it's shattered. Later, Kanata. She sees the blush on Toyotomi's face. She sees the comfortable wave. Her world is tilting on its axis, her heart pounding a rhythm of pure, unadulterated panic. What's happening here? Her brain leaps over logic and lands straight in a nightmare. She sees them together at this hour, in that atmosphere, and she reaches the only conclusion her obsession will allow. A live-in boyfriend. The sludge on her meter doesn't just drip now, it explodes, bubbling and gushing with a toxic purple intensity that matches the fire in her eyes. "You thieving cat," she hisses into the night. Kanata shivers, a sudden ominous presence crawling up his spine. The game just changed. The morning sun hits the school, but Marika is stuck in the dark. She's replaying last night like a horror movie on loop, her heart hammering against her ribs. What kind of relationship do those two even have? She whispers, the logic of a normal friend completely abandoned for a spiral of total raw panic. The bell rings, but for Marika, the alarm is already going off inside her head. Kanata slides the door open with a cheerful wave, completely oblivious to the target on his back. Marika freezes, her shock radiating off her in waves until she forces a smile. She needs answers about yesterday, and she needs them before her brain actually explodes. The air in the room suddenly dies. Sayuki leans against the doorframe, her gaze sharp and her tone impossibly casual. "Sup, Kanata?" The silence that follows is thick enough to choke on as Kanata beams back. "Hey Sayuki-san." Marika's pupils shrink to pinpricks. First name. Her internal voice screams, her world tilting on its axis. But Kanata just gives a peace sign, clarifying they only became friends recently. Marika lets out a breath she's been holding since the previous night, her shoulders dropping. "Ah, friends, I see." The relief is short-lived, as her obsession takes a sharp left turn into a friends with benefits nightmare. Her meter doesn't just drip, it hisses like a steam pipe ready to burst. Kanata watches the purple sludge sizzle, his stomach doing a slow, heavy roll. This is definitely not good. Across the room, Mikasa is fighting her own battle. She watches Kanata through her bangs, her cheeks heating up as she wishes she could be part of that inner circle. The popularity she's known for feels like a wall between them now. She touches her hair, the realization hitting her like a physical weight. This is definitely love. Every time she looks at him, she's searching for a bridge. Then she sees it, the pen in his hand with the little dog on top. It turns out Kanata's dog, Mameko, is the perfect conversation starter. Mikasa's face lights up as she introduces her own golden retriever. The tension of the classroom fades into talk of fur and wagging tails, ending on a promise to meet up. The weekend arrives, and Mikasa is out with her dog, her head full of what-ifs. She's barely finished hoping she'll see him when Kanata appears around the corner, Mameko leading the way, a literal shoujo manga moment in the middle of a Sunday walk. Mikasa is practically vibrating. Is this a fateful meeting, she wonders, her eyes wide. Kanata sees it before she says a word. Her meter isn't just rising, it's surging. He tries to keep it casual, complimenting the name of her dog, Chocolat. Kanata delivers the killing blow with a smile that's far too honest for his own good. It sounds like your cute personality, if I'm being honest, Mikasa's brain stalls. He called me cute. She screams internally, clutching her red face. Her imagination goes wild, casting them as the leads in a romance novel where even their dogs are soulmates. Above her head, the affection meter hits the top of the scale with a literal kiwa sound effect. Kanata just stares, wondering how he's accidentally winning. Kanata decides he has to tank his popularity for Marika's sake. He puts his plan into motion. Show her his lame side. He waits for the moment, then throws himself into a theatrical faceplant, slam. He hits the ground with a grunt that's meant to be pathetic. He stays down, waiting for her to be turned off by his clumsiness. Mikasa looks down, her expression going flat, a look of absolute soul-crushing pity. Kanata's inner monologue is a victory lap. He's convinced his lame act worked perfectly. But the universe has other plans. Chocolat gives a sudden lunge, and Mikasa is pulled right into Kanata's chest. Whoa, he gasps as she lands against him. The air between them turns electric, and suddenly, the lame plan is dead in the water. Mikasa's voice is small, her face buried in his sweater. Can you hold my hand? Kanata's heart skips a beat. He knows he should say no. He knows he needs to give her the cold shoulder, but his body isn't listening to the plan anymore. Then the world breaks. A second meter slams into Kanata's vision, skyrocketing alongside the first. He's drowning in pink bars of pure affection, his brain short-circuiting under the sheer volume of love directed at him. I don't understand girls, he screams into the void of his own mind. While Kanata is having an existential crisis, Marika is finishing her morning run. She's worked up a sweat, her breath steady, feeling a rare moment of peace after the morning's drama. She just wanted a quiet break by the park. She's stretching out, thinking about how nice the day is, until her gaze wanders toward the grass. She sees two figures huddled together in a familiar embrace. The water she was just drinking becomes a literal geyser. Her peaceful morning is officially dead. She ducks behind a tree, her eyes wide with a manic, flickering intensity. You mean to tell me you have that kind of relationship with Kokona-chan too? She whispers. Seeing them laugh together is a serrated blade through her heart. This can't be happening again. The shadows around Marika begin to thicken. She watches them flirting, her grip on the tree bark tightening until her knuckles go white. A low rumble starts in her chest, a physical manifestation of the storm brewing inside her mind. The affection meter above her head doesn't just drip, it erupts. It's a jagged pulsating pillar of purple toxicity, labeled with a single vibrating word, menacing. This spontaneous flirter, she hisses, her voice barely human anymore. Kanata feels a sudden, ice-cold chill. He looks toward the trees expecting a breeze but finds a nightmare instead. Marika is staring at him, her face twisted into a demonic Hanya mask of sheer, unfiltered rage. Is that Marika-chan? The visual data has completely evolved into something demonic. The meter is gurgling out purple sludge that pours down toward him like toxic waste. What is that, the affection meter? Kanata stammers, his legs turning to lead. His quiet life hasn't just flatlined, it's being hunted. Midnight in the Chitose household, and the air is thick with obsession. Marika is currently having a localized meltdown in a room that looks less like a teenage girl's bedroom and more like a Kanata Kitami museum. Between the dozens of printed faces staring back from the walls, she's gripping her head, drowning in the fear that her childhood friend is slipping through her fingers. She lets out a desperate, "What do I do?" Her tears aren't for sadness, they're for stakes. If she doesn't act, another girl will take him. But then a lightbulb moment courtesy of Popcorn magazine. Love technique number 2. If pushing doesn't work, try pulling. The crying stops instantly. The tears dry as a predatory grin spreads across her face. She's going to play hard to get, even if it kills her. Morning at school, and Kanata is walking on eggshells. He can still see that demonic Hanya mask burned into his retinas from yesterday, a purple dripping manifestation of whatever the hell is going on in Marika's head. He spots her down the hall, just a quiet silhouette in the corridor, and his heart does a nervous somersault. He's tired, he's scared, and he's pretty sure his social life is a ticking time bomb. But he refuses to give up. He looks at her from across the classroom, bracing himself for the PE period ahead. It's time for a desperate play. He's going to reconcile with her through pure, unadulterated effort. The gym is loud, smelling of floor wax and ambition. Kanata is huffing, but then he sees her. Marika is standing with her classmates, her meter still a towering purple nightmare, but her eyes are fixed on him. This is it. The stage is set. He narrows his eyes, whispering to himself that it's time to show her how cool he can be. He catches the pass mid-stride, feet hitting the hardwood with a heavy boom. This isn't just a game, it's a peace offering. He launches himself into the air, gravity losing the battle for one glorious second. With a guttural yah, he slams the ball home, the rim rattling under his grip. His teammates are losing their minds. But Kanata only has eyes for one person. He wipes the sweat from his brow, looking for any sign of a crack in her armor. Nothing. Marika stares back with a face so flat it's practically a vacuum. Her meter is still drooling purple sludge, but her expression is absolute zero. Marika is internally high-fiving herself, the poker face is working perfectly. Meanwhile, the other girls, Sayuki and Mikasa, are actually seeing their affection levels climb after that display of athleticism. But Kanata? He's crumpled on the gym floor, convinced that Marika's silence means his plan failed. He's asking the universe why, though, while his soul leaves his body. School lets out, and the lockers become the next battlefield. Kanata watches Marika swap her shoes, his stomach twisting into knots. He wants to invite her to walk home, but the rejection feels inevitable. He's stuck in a loop of ugh, second-guessing every breath he takes. He goes for it. A nervous stuttering ask to walk home together. Marika's Hanya meter is practically vibrating with joy, but her face? Still a wall of indifference. She gives him a nonchalant okay sign, while her brain is screaming KYAA, I'm so excited. Kanata, totally oblivious, just stares at that blank face and wonders what it means. They hit the pavement together, the Hanya mask floating ominously behind her head like a demonic balloon. Kanata suggests a stop at $80 for some new seasonal drinks. Marika repeats her detached okay gesture. He's dying inside, thinking he's dragging her along, while she's secretly floating on cloud 9. The cafe is quiet, the only sound the clinking of mugs and Marika's steady, rhythmic slurping. Kanata takes a sip, his face lighting up as he blurts out, "This is tasty," but the conversation dies right there. Marika just keeps drinking, her eyes unreadable, the spectral mask of her jealousy dripping right onto her shoulder. He's practically in tears, convinced she hates him because they can't keep a conversation going. Meanwhile, Marika's internal monologue is a pink, bubbly heart. After-school dates with Kanata-kun are fun, but by the next day, Kanata's desperation has morphed into a new plan. He's going to win her heart with his cooking. He approaches her with a handmade bento, hoping the way to her heart is through her stomach. Inside Marika's head, it's a civil war. Her internal angel wants to be a good girl and accept, but the devil wants to stick to the push-pull strategy and decline. The result? A full-blown psychic wrestling match with plenty of thuds and bams. The angel is down for the count. Marika barely manages a civil, "I might as well have some," while Kanata cheers. They head to the rooftop, sitting against the fence in a silence that feels miles wide despite their shoulders being inches apart. Kanata watches her take a bite, his heart in his throat. Marika is currently experiencing a culinary epiphany. She's shaking because it's so delicious her cheeks are about to fall off. But Kanata? He sees the trembling and assumes he's poisoned her palate. He's already preparing to apologize for his bad cooking. He looks down at the bento he worked so hard on. He's loved Marika since they were kids, back when things were simple and didn't involve supernatural meters. He doesn't want to give up, he wants to be closer to her than anyone else. He takes a breath, gathering every ounce of courage left in his system. He blushes furiously, the words tumbling out before he can stop them. Will you go on a date with me on the next day off? Marika's face stays frozen in shock, but inside her soul, it's a rave. A DJ, flashing lights, and a massive Operation Success's banner. She's won. The victory lap is cut short, the rooftop door creaks open, and there she is, Sayuki, the silver-haired girl. She doesn't just walk in, she stakes her claim, sitting right next to Kanata with a casual air that sends Marika's jealousy meter into the red. Marika is already seething, watching every move like a hawk. Sayuki brings up Mashiro, the little girl from the previous encounter, who apparently keeps asking when her big brother Kanata is coming back. Kanata smiles, genuinely happy to hear it. But to Marika, big brother is a trigger word. She stares at him, her eyes wide and trembling as she repeats, Big brother. Sayuki doubles down, inviting him over on his next day off so she can treat him to some food. Kanata's eyes sparkle. He actually likes Sayuki's cooking. He's about to agree, his heck yeah, already on the tip of his tongue, when the atmosphere suddenly turns lethal. Marika's pout isn't cute. It's an omen. The demonic aura of her resentment behind her begins to burn with a purple fire, its tongue dripping with toxic rage. Kanata feels the pressure, his voice cracking as he tries to apologize, but Marika just huffs and turns away, her jealousy radiating like heat from a furnace. Then, the impossible happens. That ghostly manifestation of her fury lashes out with a physical slap and a bang. It's not a metaphor anymore. The manifestation of her rage just literally smacked the taste out of Kanata's mouth. He tumbles backward, clutching his cheek, realizing the meter has a hitbox. Sayuki is horrified, asking what happened as Kanata wobbles back to his feet. Despite the literal nosebleed and the physical assault by a ghost mask, he smiles. He tells Sayuki he can't go. He's already got plans for his next day off. He's going on a date with Marika, even if she's currently a walking hazard zone. Kanata is still reeling from the phantom slap that nearly took his head off. But he isn't backing down. He stands in his room, fist clenched and heart hammering against his ribs as he prepares for the impossible. I'm going to do my best to make her like me. Never mind that the girl he's courting is currently haunted by a literal demon of her own making. The day of the date arrives, and on the surface, they look like the textbook definition of high school romance. They stand before the aquarium, wide-eyed and glowing, two kids ready for a day of fish and feelings. She's a vision in white and blue, her hair catching the light as she tucks a strand behind her ear. But right beside that perfect blushing face, the Hanya is currently a nightmare in high definition, tongue lolling, eyes wild, and purple sludge dripping like toxic waste. Kanata decides to override his panic and actually be the protagonist of this story. He reaches out, his fingers brushing hers before he finally commits to the grab. His face is burning, but he managed it. Let's head out. Marika's heart isn't just beating, it's a frantic drumline in her chest. They start with the seals, watching the plump mothers cuddle their pups in a pile of speckled fur. Marika is visibly buzzing with excitement, remembering the stuffed seal she used to carry everywhere. It's a moment of pure, uncomplicated peace. Then come the penguins, waddling across the ice like tiny, formal businessmen until one opens its beak. Kanata recoils, realizing that beneath the cuteness lies a nightmare of serrated biology. Their mouths are jagged inside. They move through the tunnel of light and scales, thousands of fish swirling overhead like a living galaxy. They spend way too long trying to identify the pufferfish, pointing at every round, grump-faced swimmer they can find. Marika's eyes are sparkling, and Kanata starts to imagine himself taking the next step, a hand on the shoulder, a gentle pull. Then the reality of his own social anxiety hits him like a brick wall. He chickens out so hard he practically vibrates. I'm such a coward. The tranquility of the shark tank is shattered by a harsh shout that cuts through the ambient water sounds. A sudden oi makes Kanata's heart drop into his stomach. Someone is looking for a fight. Standing there are two girls who clearly didn't come for the fish. The blonde one is in his face instantly, snarling through a lollipop. Watch your step, you jerk. Kanata is trapped, his social battery hitting zero as he stares into the face of pure, unprovoked aggression. Marika doesn't hesitate. She steps between Kanata and the threat, her voice steady but her eyes narrowing. Don't get so close to Kanata-kun. The blonde isn't intimidated. She's recognized a schoolmate, and the vibe turns from a random encounter to targeted bullying. Kanata tries to step back in, his knees shaking as he tells them to stop. He's failing at being a knight in shining armor. But for Marika, this is absolute peak romance. Behind her, the Hanya is drooling with hearts in its eyes, utterly obsessed with how he's trying to protect her despite being a total wreck. The blonde starts mocking Kanata, calling him the type who's never had a girlfriend, and something in Marika just breaks. A literal snap echoes through the air. She reaches behind her back and pulls out a small black book titled Secret Note. Her voice drops to a lethal whisper. I happen to know all about you. She starts listing specifics, the singing in the bath that annoyed the neighbors, the rejection by the sumo club. It's not just information, it's a total demolition of their confidence. The delinquents aren't tough anymore, they're exposed. The two bullies scramble away in a blind panic, screaming that she's a scary girl. Kanata is left standing there, blinking at the space they occupied, wondering what kind of eldritch knowledge Marika keeps in that notebook. Kanata tries to thank her, but Marika is already back in her angel persona, her face flushed with genuine adoration. It was so cool! She's completely forgotten the psychological warfare she just waged. She's just happy her hero tried his best. They hurry to the dolphin show, snagging seats right at the front. But while the crowd is cheering, the trainer on the platform is staring at the happy couple with pure, unadulterated salt. Screw them, he thinks, eyeing the water with a malicious glint. The dolphins soar, and then comes the crash. A massive wall of water slams into the front row, leaving Kanata and Marika dripping and stunned. The trainer just watches with a twisted smirk. Drop-dead normies. This is why Kanata brought the giant backpack. He pulls out fresh towels and a spare t-shirt like a magician. I brought towels and a change of clothes. Marika stares at the shirt, her brain short-circuiting at the idea of wearing something that belongs to him. She steps out of the changing room wearing his oversized shark t-shirt. It's huge on her, the fabric swallowing her frame, and Kanata's heart just gives up. It's way too cute. Meanwhile, Marika is internally melting, her mind a loop of Kanata-kun's t-shirt. Hee. The sun is setting as they head toward the exit, the time having vanished into the aquarium's blue light. Suddenly, Kanata realizes he forgot something. He tells Marika to wait and sprints back toward the gift shop, a man on a mission. He returns breathless, holding out a small, plush baby seal keychain. He bought a matching set. I'm beyond happy. Marika's voice is small, her hands trembling as she takes the little white seal. Her level of devotion isn't just rising, it's surging with an intensity that's almost overwhelming. Then, the impossible happens. The terrifying Hanya mask above her head begins to glow, sprouting massive, feathery white wings and a golden halo. Whoa, the Hanya's appearance, it's an angel of obsession, and Kanata has no idea if this is a good sign or a final warning. The next morning, the vibes are still high as they walk to school together, the distance between them feeling shorter than ever. But in the shadows of the school gate, a new threat is watching. The silver-haired girl from before is looming, her eyes fixed on them with a chilling intensity. This isn't over. A dusty park, a stolen teddy bear, and the kind of playground cruelty that feels like the end of the world when you're 7. The girl is trembling, tears hot on her face as those two punks mock her whimper-squeak bear. Then a small shadow drops over them. Kanata doesn't have a plan, just a set of lungs and a sense of justice as he roars, "Oi, you two!" He stands his ground, arms out, playing the shield for a girl he barely knows. He shouts that they should be ashamed for bullying someone defenseless. But bravery has a price. A fist connects, stars explode in his vision, and his face crumples into something the bullies call scary, but he doesn't move an inch. The bullies bail, leaving behind a bruised hero and a recovered treasure. Kanata flashes a crooked, swollen grin, more worried about Kuma-san than his own black eye. He reaches out, a gentle hand landing on her silver hair. It's the kind of memory that stays gold, even after 10 years. Kanata jerks awake, a bead of drool nearly betraying his nap. The aquarium date with Marika drained his battery to zero. As the teacher drones on about a transfer student, the face from his dream, that sweet, crying girl, flickers in his mind. He wonders where she is now, never imagining the door is about to open. The air in the classroom shifts. She walks in like a summer breeze, silver twin tails, star-shaped pupils, and a smile that makes the boys start muttering about idols. Kanata's heart does a backflip as he stares, his internal monologue reduced to a single, breathless thought. What a beautiful girl. She's Hidaka Niino, fresh back from a decade in Italy and possessing enough charm to short-circuit the entire front row. She drops a wink like a tactical nuke, telling everyone to just call her Niino. The guys are already sweating, their internal meters probably hitting the red zone. Fate, or a very convenient script, places the open desk right next to Kanata. He's vibrating with nerves as she approaches, leaning in and letting out a bright piacere. She beams, telling him she'll be in his care. And for a second, Kanata forgets how to use a chair. Then, the world goes cold. Kanata looks up, expecting to see a number, a heart, even a drop of purple, but there's nothing. Above Niino's head, the air is empty. No meter, no affection. Just a void where his world-ending power usually thrives. He glances at the rest of the room, the familiar pinks and grays are all there, but she's a complete blank. Is there something on my face? She tilts her head, caught in his stare. Kanata nearly falls out of his skin, stammering that it's nothing while his brain screams about how gorgeous she is. The lunch bell rings, a mercy kill for the most awkward interaction of his life. He braces for impact. Marika's shadow looms, and he's already picturing the Hanya mask and the demonic aura. But when she asks to eat lunch together, she's normal? No dripping purple, no terrifying face. Just a childhood friend asking for a meal. The silence is more suspicious than a scream. Over massive bowls of char siu ramen, the mystery deepens. Niino handles her chopsticks like a pro, explaining that she lived in Japan until she was 7. She grew up right around here, actually. The pieces are starting to rattle in Kanata's head, but they haven't clicked into place yet. Kanata laughs, joking about how crazy it would be if they were childhood friends. Niino goes quiet, her gaze dropping to her noodles. So you really haven't noticed, she whispers. By the time Kanata asks what she said, the cheerful mask is back on, hiding whatever ache just crossed her face. Phones come out, and the popping of a contact exchange fills the air. Kanata freezes when he sees her profile icon, a small brown teddy bear with a blue ribbon. It's Kuma-san, the same bear seen at the playground, the same bear from his dream. He's seen it before, he knows he has. School ends, and the sharks start circling. Every guy in the hallway is suddenly casually looking for Niino's number or asking her type. She looks overwhelmed, her eyes darting toward Kanata like a distress flare. He feels that old protective urge from that day by the slides kicking back in. Before he can even say, hey, she makes her move. A pair of arms wrap around his, and a warm weight presses against his side. I'm sorry, I have some plans later. She chirps to the crowd, pulling Kanata into a full-contact hug that leaves him paralyzed. She's too close, she smells too good, and Kanata's heart is currently doing 120 in a school zone. The crowd disperses, leaving them to walk home in the quiet afternoon light. She whispers an apology for the sudden grab, her face dusted with a light pink. Kanata, trying to act manly, tells her he'll keep her on track so she doesn't get lost. The school watches from the windows, convinced they're looking at the new power couple. They stop in front of a toy shop, its window packed with plush teddy bears. Niino's eyes light up, asking him if he likes cute things too. Kanata mumbles a yeah, but immediately backtracks, worrying that liking stuffed animals isn't exactly manly. She spins on her heel, her expression turning fierce. Preferences and gender have nothing to do with each other. She demands that people be proud of what they love, her star-shaped pupils shining with conviction. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated passion that leaves Kanata blinking in awe. Then the scenery shifts. They're standing in front of the park. The slide, the fence, it's all exactly like his memory. The realization hits him like a lightning bolt, immediately followed by a much more urgent sensation in his gut. Nervousness, nostalgia, and a bad lunch combine into a sudden, desperate need for a restroom. He returns from the bathroom, breathless, only to see Niino cornered by 2 guys. It's a carbon copy of his childhood dream. He doesn't think, he just charges, arm outstretched to shield her once again. The guys back off, muttering something about a boyfriend, leaving Niino wide-eyed and blushing in the wake of his heroic rush. She doesn't pull away this time. She leans in, burying her face against his chest as she whispers, "You haven't changed at all. It's the confirmation Kanata needed. This is the girl from the park. The girl he protected. The girl who— wait, Why is she walking toward the men's room? Kanata points toward the women's side, but Naino just tilts her head, confused. She takes a breath, puts a finger to her lip, and drops the bombshell that shatters Kanata's reality. Didn't I tell you I'm a guy? The words hang in the air like a lead weight. The memories rewrite themselves in real time. The dress, the tears, the long hair, all of it. The person who just hugged him, the beautiful girl he was falling for, is a childhood friend named Nino who happens to be a dude. Kanata's brain flatlines, his eyes glazing over as the universe itself seems to shrug in the face of his total, crushing confusion.